Hello and welcome along to our latest deep dive. I'm Annie, I'm a meteorologist here at the Met Office, and we record these deep dives every Tuesday. They are an excellent way to learn a bit more about the weather here in the UK, but also elsewhere across the globe. So if you do enjoy these videos, make sure you subscribe to our channel and share them with anyone else who you think might enjoy them. So we're now into April, the clocks have changed over the weekend and our evenings have got that much lighter. But many of us have been struggling to find any dry weather to enjoy the extra daylight hours. Well, over the next 20 minutes or so, I'll cover when we can expect to see some of those dry spells, perhaps even any sunny spells this week across the UK. I'll also have a look at the weather elsewhere across Europe and also across the Atlantic in northeastern areas of the USA. But as we head towards the weekend, it is looking like it will be turning much windier here in the UK. But temperatures will also rise and we could see 20 degrees for the first time this year on Saturday before it does cool down a little bit into next week. More on that in a moment and more on the rest of April in a moment. But before then, let's have a look at what we've seen through March. So we've got our end of month stats. We've got a blog on our website as well. You can have a look at that if you would like to see more details on March as a whole. But March in general was a wet month across the UK. In fact, the UK saw 27% more rainfall than average across the UK as a whole. But you can see from the map, the rainfall was not evenly distributed. Particularly southern areas of England saw the heaviest rainfall or the most persistent rainfall. Parts of Wiltshire, Gloucestershire, Bristol, those counties, for example, saw double their monthly March rainfall throughout last month. But parts of Western Scotland as well as East Anglia saw much drier weather. And it's Western Scotland where that drier weather also brought some sunshine. So this is the sunshine map of the observations compared to average. And it's quite a small area where we saw sunnier than average weather. In general, it was a pretty dull month across the UK. Most areas just a little bit below average. We saw about 87% of our monthly sunshine across the UK as a whole. But again, it wasn't evenly distributed. Actually, the Western Isles saw one of their sunniest Marches on records. And by contrast to that, here in Devon, where I am, it was one of the dullest Marches on record as well. So because we had quite a lot of rain around, quite a lot of cloud as a result, because it was so dull, it was fairly mild. Not exceptionally mild across the UK, but for England, it was their 7th mildest March on record. Elsewhere, though, it was just above average, a degree or so above the March average. So that's March. It was a mild, wet and fairly dull month on the whole, but as we know, averages do cover up the details. So for some areas, such as Western Isles of Scotland, it was a bit of a sunnier and a drier March. But what's in store for the rest of this week? Well, let's have a look at what our jet stream is looking like at the moment. So here we are, we have the Atlantic here, the UK here. I've zoomed out a little bit just to get that picture, and you can see the jet stream, which drives a lot of those low pressure systems that brings that wet weather. It's marked on here by the deep red pinks and the fast flowing arrows. You can see we've got a bit of an unusual pattern at the moment. We've got this cut-off area of the jet stream across Greenland, and that's kind of blocking the pattern across these areas, pushing the jet stream further south. So we've got a south shifted jet stream throughout at least the middle part or much of this week, to be honest. And let's have a look at how that changes as we push forward. So if I just go back, that's where we started. And then through the week into Wednesday and to Thursday, we start to see the jet stream start to change shape a little bit. We continue to see this south shifted element of it, but this cut-off area starts to break off and ease off a little bit, and that will allow a bit more mobility, and we start to see this quite amplified pattern developing by the end of the week. So by the time we get to Friday and then Friday evening into Saturday morning, we have this very amplified pattern, and that will allow quite a deep area of low pressure to drive some very wet and particularly unseasonably windy weather across us here in the UK. So let's have a closer look at that in a little bit more detail. Oh, that's the wrong button. At what that means for our weather here in the UK. So Starting off, this is Tuesday afternoon. We'll start to see some wet weather pushing in from the southwest through the next few hours. So that by the time we get to Wednesday morning, that wet weather will push up through to the northeast. You can see, particularly across the northeast of Scotland, we're going to continue to see some quite persistent wet weather. We've also got a northerly wind here, so it will be feeling fairly cold as well. Elsewhere, though, we start to pick up this southerly wind. It's turning milder through the week as well. And so, through Wednesday, we just go back to Wednesday. Once that rain does clear through, and then it starts to sit in the northeast. Behind it, into the Midlands, much of England and Wales, we do see a drier slot. So Wednesday afternoon, I think there'll be some dry weather and potentially some sunny weather, and it'll feel fairly pleasant in the sunshine. The winds aren't particularly strong, but into the southwest, we'll start to see that next batch of wet weather arrive by Wednesday evening. The dry weather across the southwest will be earlier on in the day, though. So many areas, particularly across England and Wales, have got a good chance of some dry weather on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, we've got this next system. It's a much more showery system though, so particularly through the morning we will see some quite wet weather, particularly across southeastern areas of England. There is some uncertainty in the details of this one, but the main theme is for the bulk of the rain to push out of the way on Thursday to leave behind it a day of sunshine and showers. So there will be some sunshine between any showers, but again we've still got this quite cold feel and more persistent rain across the far northeast of Scotland, and the next weather system will feed into the southwest later on in the day. So as we head into Friday then, that weather system that's pushed up from the southwest will bring quite a wet start to many areas on Friday. So a wet start, but that rain will push off to the east, and behind it again another day of sunshine and showers, but this time it's going to be start to turn quite a lot windier as well. But we've got this southerly wind, so we're starting to drag up this much milder air. So I think particularly through Thursday and Friday afternoon there's a good chance of plenty of dry weather if you are planning on getting out and about in the garden, for example, or if you're on Easter holidays and you're wanting to do some outdoor activities. I think the best thing to do through the rest of this week, keep up to date with the details on the forecast obviously, but also if you haven't used it before, have a look at our radar on our app, the maps. You've got the radar for the past 6 hours, but also the next 5 days. You can see this weather, this rainfall, and it's worth looking at when your dry windows are each day. I'd check each morning just to make sure you've got the most up to date. They're a brilliant way to make sure you make the most of any dry weather. So it is turning milder. Let's have a look at the air mass in a bit more detail to see why it's turning milder. I'll turn the jet stream off. So if we have a closer look at the UK, as we head through the week, we do have the low pressures coming through, but we start to get this sort of stream coming in from the south and west, and it becomes more of a southerly direction from Friday and particularly into Saturday. That's when we really get the peak of the air mass temperatures. So you can see that the deeper reds show the much milder air. And see across Europe as well, it's going to be even warmer as well. It was a particularly warm weekend for some of the Baltic states. We saw over 30 degrees in these areas. Hungary saw over 30 degrees at the earliest point in the year since their records began. But we also saw 31 degrees parts of Serbia and Romania, I believe, as well. So temperatures are starting to rise across Europe when you do see some more prolonged dry weather at the moment, and that milder air, or the warmer air, coming in off parts of Africa as well. And generally in situ, once you do see high pressure developing, our days are much longer. The heat will start to build over the next few weeks in these areas, and we will see the influence of that heat through Saturday here in the UK. Let's take a closer look at the temperatures for the week. So it's Saturday when we're going to see those highest temperatures, mainly across the southeast, and you're going to need to be in sheltered areas to feel the real benefit of the warmth. But for tomorrow, these are maximum temperatures. They're very similar to today. Actually, across northern areas of Scotland, we've still got quite cold air mass through much of the week. Oh, I've skipped today there. Thursday, again, fairly similar. It's starting to get a little bit warmer, highs 16, 17 degrees. Thursday, more widely, those 15s or 16 degrees. Average temperatures for this time of year are closer to 12 or 13 degrees. And then as we head through to Saturday, that's when we could start to see the peak. So somewhere between 20, possibly closer to 21 degrees is possible across the east. We can have a look at quite nicely at how that compares to average. So as I said, it's a bit colder than average across the north so far this week. This map shows you, if you haven't seen it before, the temperature that we're expecting compared to the average for April. And this is for today. Still a fairly cold day across the north. We could see some snow showers and any rain above around 400 metres through this week as well. So it's still quite a sort of potentially wintry feel across the far north of Scotland. But further south, it's starting to feel a bit more like spring as we head through the week. And by Friday, temperatures are a good 3 degrees above the April average for quite a wide area, particularly this eastern area of England, northeastern England. And then it's Saturday when we could see that 21 degrees, so we would be quite a few degrees, potentially close to 8 or 9 degrees above average across the east. But in the west, when you're exposed to that quite brisk breeze, is going to be it will be colder by comparison, but still just about average, so there's sort of 12, 13, 14 degrees potentially. So it's getting milder through the week, but what is happening? Let's go to the actual temperatures. To the temperatures, as I said, if you are going away anywhere, I'm just going to get a good angle on this. Let's zoom out. If you are going away anywhere in Europe, there we are, I'll just get some locations on there. So through this week, we want our maximum, those are the minimum temperatures. Oh, that's changed. It's changed the location after all that work. Let's go back again. Right, that's better. Okay, yeah, so tomorrow's maximum temperatures for Wednesday, generally across much of Europe, we're in the high teens. Across parts of Tunisia, we're starting to get into the high 20s. Quite warm closer to Turkey as well. As I said, the Baltic states have seen some quite warm, high temperatures over the weekend, and we'll start to continue to see those temperatures rise into Friday, into the mid-20s for some areas of Spain, southeastern areas of France as well, starting to see the temperatures really pick up. And then on Saturday, that's when we see the peak in the UK, and we'll likely see the higher temperatures across central eastern areas of Europe. We could be closer to the higher 20s, possibly higher than that as well. So that's because we've got high pressure building in across parts of Europe. So whilst we've got this south shifted jet and this very unsettled weather, these low pressure systems still continuing to push into parts of the UK. Actually, put the rain on. Across parts of Europe, we've got that high continuing to build in, and across parts of southern Europe, really, France, Spain, towards Greece. That's where we'll see the benefit of this high pressure through the week. There is, though, going to be some quite persistent and heavy rainfall for some areas, particularly through Tuesday and Wednesday, across parts of Russia. Finland as well could see some quite heavy snowfall, some quite late snowfall for the season as well, due to this low pressure system through Tuesday, through tonight and into Wednesday, before that low pressure system pushes off further east. So potentially some quite late snowfall to come. And also I wanted to show you as well, across northern Iberia, this little spot here, you can see some rainfall on Thursday. But if I go back to Wednesday, you can see they'll continue to see this sort of stream of rainfall from this south shifted jet. This string of low pressure systems are going to continue to bring some quite heavy rainfall, particularly into Friday and into the weekend, to this sort of parts of Portugal as well as parts of Spain as well, so that northern Iberia region. They could see double their April rainfall over the next few days. So potentially some quite disruptive weather to come for these areas. This low pressure system that brings that wet weather and eventually pushes it through has actually been named by the Portuguese Met Service as Storm Olivia, and that will then push up towards the UK. It's not been named by us, but as I said, it will bring some windy weather to us here in the UK. We'll have a closer look at that in a little bit more, in more detail in just a moment. But before then, I just wanted to have another look at the weather elsewhere. So this time we'll move over to across the Atlantic to parts of eastern Canada, northeastern USA as well. And you can see, if I zoom in a little, I just want to get some place names up. They've got a nor'easter storm. That's when you have the northeasterly winds bringing that cold weather. So again, here they could also see some quite late snowfall as well across parts of northeastern USA as well as Canada on this northern edge. On the southern edge through Wednesday, there's quite a risk of thunderstorms, tornadoes as well, some potentially very disruptive thunderstorms, hail, so some damage is likely from all of that. That then pushes out the way of this more southern area, but then it's the snowfall that continues to affect parts of Quebec, for example, as we head through the rest of the week. So they could see quite a lot, potentially up to a metre of snowfall starting to develop in these areas. So keep an eye on that through the week if you are interested in the weather in these areas. But again, that's quite a late wintry spell. That does then push off and drive away by the time we get to the weekend, and that's because of the how we see the change in our jet stream, the pattern in our jet stream change. So let's have another look at that. Just zoom out, turn off the rainfall. So we start to see by Friday that cut-off area that we had. If I go back, this cut-off area that was kind of blocking the pattern, stopping anything from shifting and just continuing to keep that low pressure system, that nor'easter storm in the same place. That cut-off area does start to weaken, and eventually we get a bit more mobility in the jet stream and things start to push off across the Atlantic, and that's what develops that area of low pressure that could bring us some very windy weather on Saturday. Well, unseasonably windy. Obviously it's April, it's not a particularly windy month. In general, as we start to see, normally our spring-like settled weather start to come in, but when we do see some, we could potentially see some quite windy weather for the time of year on Saturday. There's quite high confidence in that low pressure developing. This map shows us, this chart shows us, it's from ECMWF, the European model, it's long-range model. It shows you where we're likely to see these low pressure centres. So this is the system, this is Saturday. And you can see there's quite a few similarly coloured dots. That shows how deep it could be. But also they're scattered a little bit around, but they're generally just to the north and west of the UK. So we're likely to see that low pressure system push up to the north and west of the UK, and it could bring gusts in excess of 50 knots, so that's closer to 60 miles per hour. This is the ensemble forecast, the most likely, where we've got probabilities of seeing greater than 50 knots. We look at these sorts of forecasts when we're over greater than a few days away. Obviously, Saturday is a few days away, so this is the much more reliable way of looking at the weather. And you can see the most likely areas to see these stronger gusts, potentially severe gale force winds up through the Irish Sea, but we could also see them affecting northwestern coast of the UK, and potentially we could see some quite strong inland gusts. So Saturday will likely be quite a busy day on the roads, lots of people travelling around, as well as it is the holidays. So keep an eye on that. There could be some disruption to travel on that, and we'll be keeping you up to date all through this week for any more details on all of that. Right, so what's going to happen after that? Obviously, we've still got unsettled weather. Yes, there will be some dry and sunnier weather, some breaks as I've just gone through, but what is the trend? Well, some of you eagle-eye viewers may have spotted these reds on the map. There is a recent trend to slightly higher pressure, or there has been in the past few runs. This is only in the European long-range model. Actually, the American long-range model doesn't have this trend, so it's not anything to hang your hat on just yet, but there are some signs that we could see some higher pressure for a time that will likely bring a greater likelihood of some dry spells. Nothing prolonged. You can see that we return back to the blues being more likely. That's lower pressure becoming more likely from then on. But there's a chance through the middle part of next week we could see some dry weather. So where's that dry weather more likely? Well, that's much less certain. This is another European long-range model output. This shows you with the pink SAR, that's where we could see higher than average pressure throughout the week of the 8th of April. And you can see that area of high pressure that's developing over parts of Europe, the Azores high, could drive up and bring some more settled weather to southern areas, and potentially we could see lower pressure pushing into the north again. So that would be sort of a push up of that jet stream, those low pressure systems, a little bit further north. However, we look at another model that only shows you sort of an average. You can see actually there's still quite a lot of flip-flopping. There's still a chance of some blues dominating throughout that period. Here's Monday the 8th of April. So we could see those lower pressure regimes dominating, but also there is still a good chance of seeing some more settled weather, but that type of high pressure varies really. So the Azores high, yes, is possible. That's that kind of orangey yellow, but the deeper reds show you more of a Scandinavian high that could bring the dry weather to more northern areas. So I think the takeaway from this is that there could be there's a chance of at least some drier spells, perhaps a drier day or two, or just an afternoon or morning throughout next week. After a mild start to the weekend, it will cool down, but in the sunshine, as we are in April, it will continue to feel fairly warm. That is all I have time for today. Thank you so much for joining me. Don't forget to share this video with anyone else you think might enjoy it. Please comment on what you've enjoyed. If you've got any questions as well, I'll be around to answer your questions through the next few hours. And that's all from me today. Bye-bye.